Thanks for joining us for another My Wealth webinar. Today's call is very interesting. There's a lot of things happening. We've got some pretty substantial experts in the form of Netramark coming in. We have the former Director General of the Italian Medical Agency and the CEO of Netramark, George Achilleos. With that, there's a lot of things happening in the space. You guys are making some really incredible, groundbreaking moves, but why don't we take it back to the start? Luca, how about talk a little bit about yourself, your background, kind of what brought you to this opportunity and the opportunities ahead of it?
So I was born and raised in Sardinia, in Italy. I'm an MD, I'm a psychiatrist and a pharmacologist. And middle of my career, I would say, I was called from the Italian Minister of Health to represent Italy at the European Medicine Agency, which oversees all the medication for 600 million individuals. It's like the European FDA, basically. It does not do food, but that's what it is. And after 1 year in the job, he called me again and says, "No, you're going to become Director General of the agency, of the Italian agency, which is both a regulator and a payer." He oversees the $30 billion expenditure for the country. On that, I became a regulator. This was over 10 years ago, actually more like 16 years ago. And on that position, you have the responsibility for any drug that comes into the Italian market. You oversee the European one, of course, and you price it. So a lot of experience on that was on what everybody's talking about now, Jeff, which is real-world evidence data. We had a lot of real-world evidence data because now Canada is similar, I was told. Everything was paid by the government, so the government wanted to know. So we had registries. And those registries generated a lot of data. But back in the days, we did not have the analytic power. So we had all this data and not doing anything with it, basically, sitting on a gold mine. And this links to Netramark, because in one of my talk in a big international conference, this kid, it was a kid back then, George Erachi, was presenting a mathematical model for 2017, okay? So it's almost 10 years ago. A mathematical model for analyzing clinical trial. He thought the clinical trial could be described in a mathematical way, which in principle, it's true. Everything can be described in a mathematical way, but biology is very difficult. So he came up to me, and I finished this little intro, and he said, "Director, I mean, you're regulator. I'd like to have a regulatory approval of what I'm doing." I said, "What? Excuse me?" "Yeah, I like to kind of I've validated this. I think I can validate." Well, believe it or not, this kid, now I joined the company more than 5 years ago, actually, officially 4 years ago, but it's been always, we did that. We did that. We went in front of the FDA, and the FDA gave us the blessing. So it was an incredible thing, one of the best things I've done in my life, to have this story with George Erachi and Netramark. And then when George came up, it became real. Before, we were all theoretical and very hypothetical, but now it become very, very real, very real.
Why don't you just talk a little bit more about the pharmaceutical trial space? What is the big problem, and what are you guys trying to solve? Where's the opportunity here, and how big is that opportunity?
Beautiful question. So the problem is that clinical trials are still now too often designed around the average patient, the guy in the middle, right? And but the average patient does not really exist. Each of us is unique. So in a typical trial, you might have some patient who responds beautifully to the drug. Okay, the numbers are around the 15%. Okay, 50% do wonder. Okay, and you have some who are miserable with the drug, another 15%. Some respond to nothing, Jeff. They respond to placebo. You might say, what do you mean? as good as the good one? Yeah, they do. The placebo response is very, very strong. Some do not respond at all to nothing. Okay, so now the thing becomes convoluted, and when you lump all these patients together, the real treatment effect disappears basically, because you put them all together. How does people try to solve this? Fascinates me. The American way, I call it, and I'm American in part. Okay, so no disrespect. Oh, let's increase the number. To what? To infinite. I mean, let's run digital trials on n equal 500,000. We will find, no, you will find 500,000 variables. That's what you'll find. Okay, and that's complicated everything. This particular thing that I'm saying is very difficult in places like depression, schizophrenia, Alzheimer, pain, psychedelics, and autoimmune. So every time that the human becomes heterogeneous, and the brain is unique, right? The brain is absolutely a unique organ. We can discuss about the liver, the heart, Jeff. We can discuss how these are more homogeneous, but the brain, no. If you have a monozygotic twin, identical to you, identical, that only your mother can tell the difference, your brains are going to be different. Okay, the brains are different. The liver, no. The toes, no. The ends, no. But the brains are different. Okay, what we did, we did the training vastly on CNS disorder. So the machine learned on a very difficult field, which is the heterogenesis field. And now, in fact, we are moving also to have relationship and data sets on oncology, for instance, very important oncology. That is much easier. So the problem that we solve is not really, can we use AI, because AI is in fashion now. Now, if you don't say algorithm at least once in your day, you are a loser, right? You have to say, I said it right now, so I'm good. Okay. The problem is, can we use explainable AI to find the patient that are driving the success or the failure of a trial? So the stratification problem. Okay. And Netra does exactly that. It looks inside the data, tries to identify explainable patient subpopulation, okay, what we call the model-derived subgroup or personas, okay, and answer this question: who responds, who does not, who responds to placebo, who may be at risk, and what variable explain the differences. The most fascinating this thing does, Jeff, fascinating, he has the ability to say, I don't know. AI, your LLM, for instance, you all use LLM, right? The LLM are pleasing you. The more ignorant you are, the more it will please your ignorance. So what the LLM are generating, and we have proven this thing, these are not my words, we have run experiments, we have published data, we publish a lot. We publish a lot in very important papers, Nature, Digital Medicine, Archives, Frontiers in Pharmacology, very important places, okay? So peer review, 15 impact factors, things are really important. We have tried this and we show that this is a unique mathematical model.
So if we take this on a scale, not too many people know about pharmaceutical trials as much. How many roughly happen around the world? And how many of those are you guys trying to tackle and focus on from a global scale?
Of clinical trials around the world in different phases. So the phases of a clinical trial are the phase 0, which very few people know exists, which is the microdosing, very small dosing, which now is very popular because of the psychedelics. So you don't really find anything specific, but just a taste of how a drug can perform. Then the phase 1, which is usually in healthy volunteers, so people that have no disease, unless they have a cancer, terminal cancer, or they have some very, very tough infectious disease. For those who have seen Dallas Buyers Club, you know, you have that type of HIV in the beginning of the history of the HIV development, the movement of the patients affected by HIV in the 80s tried the drugs directly on them, okay, before any voluntary. Usually that is an healthy volunteer. Then there is the phase 2. The phase 2 is when you find some dose response. You are already in a disease, okay, so you might have a couple of doses. You have some safety, okay. It's always a balance between efficacy and safety. And then you have the one, the really validate thing, which is a phase 3. So multicentric, multinational, the scale also becomes much bigger. In a phase 1, you have 8 to 12 to 20 patient maximum. In a phase 2, you have maximum, I would say, 100 patients, 60, 80, 100. In a phase 3, you have 300, 400, 500 patients, okay? And then there is phase 4 when you are already in the market, and is the market feedback, when you go in the thousands and thousands, okay? How many trials overall of these 3, 4 phases are there? Hundreds of thousands in the world, okay? 60 to 80,000 for the major drugs. Just for the psychedelics, for instance, in this country, only for psychedelics, which are a tiny part, there are 150 trials running right now. Most of them are academics, by the way. So that's one thing that we tackle. We tackle psychedelics, for instance. We tackle depression, in which there are hundreds of trials around the world. Oncology, hundreds of trials around the world. So it's a unfortunately for Netramark, but unfortunately for the humankind, there is no shortage of clinical trials, because we are always searching for a better drug. You know, now everybody's talking about the GLP-1, right? Everybody's fascinated by this, these drugs, semaglutide, tirzepatide, and so on. Well, guess what? GLP-1 have been around for about 2 decades. Okay, same thing, but they were not like this one. You might remember the hepatitis C virus, right? The hepatitis C sofosbuvir, the Gilead drug, right? Again, those type of drugs similar were there before, and telaprevir, boceprevir, they were present. They did not respond. So the drug companies and the biotech companies are always searching for something better. You might say it's also, of course, patent protection is evolution, true. There is profit involved, and rightly so. There is reinvestment to be done, right? These companies invest a significant part of the total profit in R&D. And one part, the most expensive, is the phase 3 trial. So you're running a phase 3 trial. If you're lucky, it's a couple of hundred millions, okay? If you're unlucky or it's very complicated, it's 400 million, even more sometimes. We de-risk clinical trial. From our soft spot, our power machine is between the phase 2 and the phase 3. You finish the phase 2, the machine learns only in your trial, or anything that is public, but in your trial is the best, and project and design exactly what is needed
Jeff, if
for
I
the
could add a
phase
couple
3.
of things to that, because you asked about the problem that we're trying to solve in the pharmaceutical industry. I can tell you without even a remote question, no one within the pharmaceutical industry would debate, are they worried about their trial failing? I mean, this is a known problem. Clinical trials, late phase clinical trials, which is a phase 2 going into a phase 3. You imagine having a successful phase 2 and you're still having failure rates in phase 3 in and around the 50 to 65% range. So this is a problem where there's no need for us to spend time when we're engaged with a pharmaceutical company trying to convince them of the problem, which is, I think, one of the unique things about Netramark. Often when you're starting a new business, you're really having difficulties concocting what's the real hard problem that needs to be solved. And the companies that I think over time are uber successful are trying to solve really, really hard problems. And when you're trying to
Yeah.
solve really hard problems and do really great things, you really need to have an amazing team, and you have to be able to figure out how you're going to break through, because when you have a problem that's this difficult, and clinical trials have been going on for a long time and the failure rates continue to be very high, the biggest challenge you face, and we face as Netramark, isn't convincing people of the problem. It's convincing people of the solution that you have. Does it actually help? Because nobody believes anything helps. They're all just got their 17-step process, etc. And that's why you have to spend a lot of time creating the evidence that supports that your technology actually works. So when we're putting out press releases on Netramark just entered into a collaboration with the Mayo Clinic. Netramark just entered into a collaboration with FMP that has a huge oncology data set, or Netramark entered into a collaboration with the NIMH, or Netramark entered into a collaboration with the Center for Addiction and Mental Health. And a lot of people will be like, who cares? Another collaboration. Those collaborations are critical, because those are the only way that if you can somehow enter into those collaborations, get access to that data, use the damn technology we have, find something and co-publish with them in some reputable publication, that is the only way to convince a pharmaceutical company that your tech actually does something. There is no shortcut around this. I don't care who you are or what tech you've developed. There's no way of getting around this problem. And I'm sure, Luca, that you would agree. And that's why we continue to do these collaborations. And we've been doing them for a while. So now we're at a place where, we do have a decent library of evidence that we can provide to the market. And this is one of the very important foundational steps. So just keep in the back of your mind, Jeff, we're trying to solve a really difficult problem that affects human beings all over the world. And heaven forbid, if anybody on this call knows somebody that's got some disease, maybe some of them have entered into a clinical trial. And heaven forbid, if they enter into the clinical trial and the drug doesn't meet their endpoint, and then that drug goes kaput. And there are a lot of people in trials where the trial doesn't continue, but the trial was actually helping a bunch of people. And then those trials fail. Okay, so we're trying to do something big and important, and that takes a lot of work. That's a lot different than when you're just trying to say, hey, you know what? We think there could be an opportunity to improve the cup manufacturing business, and we're going to come up with a cool cup. Who cares? Right? And the question then you have to ask yourself, and I don't want to put the questions in your mouth, Jeff, is why is Luca Pani join Netramark of all the companies he could join? Why does Angelico Carta join Netramark? I'm a tech guy. I'm not a pharma guy, right? So why are these pharma heavyweights? Why did Panteli, a fellow Greek, Panteli Theokaros, why did he join Netramark? Why are these people associating themselves? And maybe, Luca, you can answer the question, why the hell are you spending time on Netramark? And sorry, Jeff, I don't want to put questions into your mouth, but maybe that would be a good question for Luca to answer.
But it's very easy. I mean, it's the most interesting thing that is happening in clinical trials. I mean, we started. I started using AI way before people even started to know what LLM were or GPT were, and it was clear they would be the way of addressing biological problems. For instance, the Nature Digital Medicine publication is a phase 2 ketamine trial in treatment-resistant depression from the National Institute of Mental Health, okay? And so they had this data, they had published on this, and they gave us the data set to use this, and they were using AI for many years. And that showed the Netra AI could identify meaningful, explainable patient subgroup in a small and very complex CNS data set. That phase 2 trial improved predictive accuracy by 25-30%. So it means, let me translate this in practical terms, it means 1 patient out of 4 that was completely missed now could identify beating what? Not statistics, beating traditional machine learning approach. So any high-level machine learning could not do it. For me, this is the most, I've been doing clinical trial because that's another thing that happens. Once a regulator, you're always a regulator. They prime your brain, they do something to you and you cannot go out. It's like Michael Corleone. They pull you back. They pull you back all the time. So that's what it is. And there's nothing more interesting than this, but it's not me saying it. It's, the FDA said this. The FDA said this, and the FDA now, I think we're going to have a paper coming out, a preprint very soon. You probably have seen the public disclosure from the FDA using this ELSA plus ALO. So the AI time is coming to the FDA and to a lot of other regulatory agency. So now, Jeff, you tell me if a pharmaceutical sponsor can go in front of the FDA without any high-level AI, not your regular Joe, not your enterprise Gemini. No, not your Claude or things like this. Those are very good in describing what is happening. They write very well. Anthropic writes very well, okay? You can use Claude to write stuff, but not to discover stuff. So you go in front, I always say this to George, it's like going in front of the FDA without a statistician. So they have a statistical division, and you are there, and when they ask you a statistical question, you say, well, I don't know this. I don't do statistics on my data. The same thing is going to happen with AI. And by the way, this AI will fuel statistics in a way that is not even anticipated. Let me explain this a second. These machines, what they do, this particular, they identify patterns. So a new nosography is coming, something new is coming. The ability of putting together, and we are very, very boring creatures, we human. We repeat the same thing over and over and over, right? Whether you know it or not, Jeff, me, George, everybody in this call has a pattern of repetition in the daily basis. There are some variation, but basically it's that, okay? If you have any of this thing on you, this one, okay? They take all this data, and I've analyzed this. I have 10 years of this data, and I've crushed it and analyzed it. And you see this perfect pattern, In the last 10 years, my pattern was very predictive, very similar with some variation. Then something happened. Something major happened. In March 2020, COVID hit, and my pattern changed. So it took a major pandemic event to change the pattern of my biology. And since then, I've taken another pattern, different from the one before. I've never come back to the pre-COVID time in my biology. Never. Okay. It might happen to a lot of people, by the way. And I'm not talking about post-COVID. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about pattern in biology, sleep, food, activity, exercise, those very fundamental things that are changed. So you need that type of event. The machine will find it, will find the patterns. And that's what now the FDA will have, patterns recognition. It's a revolution.
Jeff, just to expand, that is a press release that the FDA, that Luca is pointing to. It is publicly available information. The FDA put out a press release on May 6th announcing ELSA/HALO, which is their internal, not for pharmaceutical companies to use, their internal tools that they have access to analyze the data that comes to them now from a pharmaceutical company. So if you're a pharmaceutical company and you're now going to the FDA after the phase of your trial and you're going to present the results of your trial, there is now an elevated level of scrutiny that is about to fall onto the pharmaceutical industry on every single pharma company running a trial that it's nothing they've ever seen before. And using their traditional statistical and AI and ML methods to prepare for an FDA meeting is going to be inadequate. And which segues nicely, Jeff, into, I talked about evidence, that we require evidence, that we collaborate with companies to provide evidence to the pharmaceutical companies like the NIMH and Mayo, et cetera. The other thing that is necessary for a company like Netramark to do, or any company that wants to make any headway, is the next question from a pharmaceutical company is going to be, this is interesting technology. What does the FDA think about it? And to our research, and this is, I put it with a caveat, we had a critical path innovation meeting, which Luca can talk about what was really important that came out of that. But that meeting took almost a year from start to finish. And we can't find a single other company that has had a critical path innovation meeting that's a competitor to ours. We can't find one. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but they publish, the FDA puts out who they have critical path innovation meetings with. Anyone on this call can go and look it up. Okay. And we had that meeting in the end of 2025. And if you now marry the results of that meeting where the FDA co-published a press release with us saying that we are different from AI, traditional AI, ML, machine learning methods. We are different than traditional statistical methods, right? Because if Jeff Hunter decided tomorrow, hey, I use these traditional statistical methods, I'm going to call the FDA and see if I can get a critical path innovation meeting to convince them about how spectacularly unique my traditional statistics or AI are, their response will be meeting declined, covered under existing frameworks that are out there. No meeting. We had a meeting with them. People need to understand the importance, how critical this is. And now when you layer on how critical that is with the May 6th press release, you can put 2 and 2 together where the FDA has basically said there's nothing innovative with traditional AI, ML, statistical Bayesian methods, to the point that they haven't taken any meetings with any of those companies, but they did with us and co-press released with us. Netramark achieves major FDA milestone. They wrote that, okay? When you look at that and you marry it with the May 6th press release, I will let your audience start to put things together. And Luca, maybe you could expand on how critical that FDA point of view is that we received from them.
I carry this with me. You cannot see it, but you can see this. You can recognize perhaps. This is the FDA. This is the FDA original minutes that they send it to us. Okay. I carry this always with me. It's not for this call. It's always with me. It's like a mantra, because there is a sentence here that says the FDA noted that this is what they wrote. They sent it to you, right? They said this is what we noted, that one way to reduce uncertainty regarding which patient would benefit would be to use the tool for not for the enrichment of the enrolled population, but as a tool for stratification of randomization. Look, listen to this, and or the analysis. So the FDA is saying you can design a trial based on NetraAI, and you can analyze a trial based on NetraAI and give us the stratum of the population. And now you go back to what I said in the beginning. Some people will respond, some people will not respond. The FDA says this is the tool that you can use to do that. This is simply revolutionary. If people don't understand this, I understand not everybody is versed in things like this, but this is completely revolutionary because this is the dawn of real precision medicine. I've been talking about precision medicine for decades, and nothing was happening because you don't have the tool. Every time everybody will say, yes, sure. My brother is different from me. My sister is different from me and is responding to this drug. By the way, in the family, drug response are similar. No, they're not identical. In fact, a good pharmacologist, a good clinician, okay, after 30, 40, 50 years of practice, will be able to approximate what NetraAI does. Because the human brain is able then to put together a couple of things and say, this patient is similar to a patient I saw 20 years ago. And it did very well with this combination. Another thing that you will do, in fact, you go to the doctor. Tell this to everybody in the call and to all of your family members. If a doctor does not take your family history in drugs, meaning what drugs do any of your family members have any disease, and do they take any drug that you know of, and they do well, not well, this is an incredible information. because the interface between the drug and the disease in an individual, it's runs in family. Okay, we know, for instance, in psychiatry, but also in oncology and so on, some drugs will respond to some people. So that is the ability of making this possible. And the FDA has not giving us a certification. That the CPM meeting, I have to state, this is a very important call. So for forward-looking statements, it's not binding. It's not binding. The CPM meeting is not binding. But this sentence, I read it verbatim. That's exactly what they say. So there is a path forward. I don't think anybody else has this, George, by the way, in the world. Sometimes you ask me, I checked. There's nobody who has done anything like this in the AI space in front of the FDA.
I think the key here is what we're talking about here, Jeff, is, and we'll get back to your questions. I know we've kind of railroaded your discussion here, but I think what we're talking about here is when you're doing something monumental, when you're doing something big, when you're trying to change an industry and how an industry approaches a problem like clinical trials, that approach has been standard approach forever. And when you're going in and trying to change that, you need mounds of evidence, which we've been working on. You need FDA interaction, which we've achieved, okay, in order for you to even contemplate penetrating this industry. So a lot of the heavy lifting for Netramark is behind us. And that's why the future is really exciting. That's why Pantelli recently joined. And that's why Luca and Angelico have joined. Why have these people joined? Because we have a really amazing opportunity here to actually, as Lucas said, it's the dawn of the precision medicine era. And we get to be part of something that is actually fundamental to the evolution of precision medicine. That's pretty cool.
So just touching on that, you guys started off kind of a Calgary home base listed CSE company, just listed on the TSX, which is a pretty significant milestone. But it's not just a Canadian company. Like, talk about the backgrounds and the global reach that you guys have within your company, because people are still looking at it as, oh, this is a Canadian company. And I'm like,
Yeah.
there's Canadian elements in there, but every person I speak to is from a different area of the world, and they're all coming to the same thing. So for the people that are looking, oh, well, this is just AI on the TSX, that's great. This isn't just AI on the TSX. This is a global reach that you guys have, and your connections and network are invaluable in general. Just maybe highlight for the people on the call just everyone's background and reach in there, because I think that's one thing that separates you guys from most, if not almost all the companies
100%.
are on that
Yeah.
space, because it isn't just this isolated problem. This is a global problem and a global reach that you guys are addressing.
Yeah. Well, and Jeff, when you're trying to do something big and monumental, you need to get international brains behind this. Okay. I'm Canadian. Dr. Joe Geraci's Canadian, and we have some developers in Canada. That's about the extent of Canada. Okay. So first of all, any pharmaceutical companies we've been speaking to are either in the United States or Europe, number one. If you look at the people, Luca Pani, Italian, but lives in Washington, obviously, now, so he's American. Josh Spiegel lives in New York. Jan Sedway, North Carolina, who's our VP, Senior Vice President, Clinical Science. Pantelli Theokaris, London, England. Angelico Carta, which splits his time between Rome, Italy, and London, England. Like, these people are coming from all over the globe to join this company, to help this company get to where it's at. And hopefully we can have a moment to talk a little bit as well about Pantelli and worldwide, Jeff. But I do want to emphasize there's nothing local and Canadian about this company. This is a global problem. And we're just having to work through the mounds of evidence and the FDA support and the things that you need to do. And the best way to get all that stuff done is to I feel lucky, because I look around at the people I get to work with on a daily basis, and honestly, I'm like, holy shit, there's some heavyweight titans here. This is impressive. I get to call Luca Pani a friend, a brother. And he's the former Director General of the Italian Medicines Agency, where he saw probably over 800 drugs, Luca, correct me on the number, go into market and manage a
Yeah.
massive budget, and served on senior European Medicine Agency committees. Then you got Angelico. Okay, just think about this. This is a $1 billion CRO, worldwide clinical trials. I can give a little update on that in a second, where you have and they were bought for over 2 billion about 2 years ago. Okay, this is not a small organization, where you have the co-founder and president of that company that joined us as our chief innovation and strategy officer. And then recently, if you look at the background of Pantelli, Dr. Pantelli, he's our fractional CMO, and it's important that he's fractional. Actually, it's to the benefit of Netramark. Okay, his background is oncology, okay, which is an important market for us. CNS is the central nervous system, space where between Luca and Angelica, we have a lot of experience there. Oncology is a different beast. Oncology is like handmade for Netramark, because you're talking about biological variables and signatures. The machine loves this stuff. It's not about qualitative, psychiatric, values, etc. So Dr. Pantelli Theokaris joined. Why? Because he looked at it through his oncology lens. Okay, and while he's doing this job, what's his job at Worldwide Clinical Trials? Oh, he's the president of Europe, and he's the chief clinical science officer reporting to the CEO of Worldwide Clinical Trials. Okay, so why on earth is he spending his time on Netramark? Because it's at the early stages. We're dawning a new era of precision medicine.
Yeah, you
And
want
the
to be,
people
yeah.
that are coming from this industry, that's what they see. Sorry, Luca, go ahead.
No, I mean, you should, I mean, first of all, Jeff, you put together an Italian and a Greek. What do you want here? And I mean, the call will go bananas, of course. I mean, that to your point of being completely, we have discussion. We just, this was Latin. No, this was Greek. No, it was Latin. It was Greek. No, you copy from us. No, you copy from us. Is all this. That's why we go along. The story about Pantelis, which is fascinating, is also how we came on board. He was doing the oncology thing, so we gave a presentation like we're doing today with you, and he was on worldwide, and he wanted to have some important meeting with oncologists, for which he was defending a phase 3. Okay, and we start talking, and we showed data. We showed data on pancreatic cancer, lung cancer, separation. This incredible data set from the Nature Medicine Rome trial that we have. Okay, before you know, it's like, you guys are doing something amazing. I've never seen this. Can we join forces? Then, of course, George, worked with him and says, "What do you mean? I like to be part of this team. Can you? Yeah. And are you gonna leave with WCD? No, I'm not gonna leave it, but I want to be involved. And you know why? Because people want to have a bite of history. So you want to be a little bit able to say, I was there. When that happened, I was part of this. I've seen this other times when the internet was booming, and believe it or not, the first newspaper online was a journal in Sardinia. Okay, and you can check. Tiscali was there by Renato Soru. Video online, those things. I saw this happening, and it's absolutely the most thrilling thing a human being can do, is to be part of something that changes for good in this case, the health of our fellow humans. And this is why we are here. At the end of the day, it's not the project per se, is not the investments, the money, the finance, is to be with our fellow humans and doing together something that you have a clear perception it will change the face of medicine.
Exactly.
And that's the reason.
Don't kid yourself. It's not like Luca or Pantelli or Angelico don't have other opportunities that they could spend their time
all the time.
That's not the issue. We all have other things we could be doing.
All the
Why
time.
on earth are we doing this? Because it's big. It's important. We actually want to, think about this, Jeff. Like right now, a drug, when you go in, we did this study where we looked at pancreatic data on 2 drugs that are currently used for people with pancreatic cancer. And when we asked the doctors, how do you decide between this FFX and GMP, what you're going to administer? Their answer to us, I'm not joking, was intuition. So you're going in to see your doctor, and they're sitting there saying, how do I decide between this treatment or that treatment? Intuition. That's bananas. That makes no sense. And so we analyzed that data and said, no, if they have this profile, you give them GMP. If they have this profile, you give them FFX. Honestly, it's a head scratcher. It's confusing to the market, because they don't understand that this is something possible. When we get on a call with a pharma company, here's the questions it takes a while for their brain to catch up. What data did you train on? Did you train on 500,000 external clinical trial data sets? No, we're going to train on your data. Oh, head scratcher. What? My data? I have 150 patients in this trial. You're going to train on my data? Yes, a head scratcher. They don't understand this. It's a paradigm shift for people in this industry. But I can tell you, as 4 years of CEO, this has been a lot of headwind. And now it's starting to turn into a tailwind. Now, when I was first trying to work on this thing, forget the first year, we were doing other stuff, cleaning things up. But in the commercialization exercise, it first was AI, forget it. It's this nefarious thing. I'm scared. That's gone. Now it's more of companies in the pharma industry, they're firing divisions of people, okay, that were protocol writers, gone, replaced with LLM.
Gone.
So at least now their mindset's changed to, okay, this AI thing's not a fad. And if anybody says it's a fad, they're confusing the reality of the world. I was at IBM for many years during the internet bubble where people said that internet thing's a fad. Okay, it's 26 years later. It's still here. That's a long fad as far as I'm concerned, right? So there's not a fad, but so the industry now has at least come around to, okay, this AI thing's not going away, but they're still stuck on LLM, large language model. It's not large variable model. That's what the trials are capturing, a lot of variables. So those large language models get confused when they're trying to analyze variables. They get stuck, they get overwhelmed. It's a combinatorial explosion for the large language models. They can't do this. And we will continue to provide further evidence to prove that a large language model can't do this. And in fact, some of the stuff that we've put out is around what we call speciation. This is the words that Luca came up with Joe. It's kind of like a beast that's being created. This new species is being created, which is to make a case to say the future of AI is in purpose-built AI. This AI, oh, you want general stuff about language and to help you, research some, sure, use LLM. You want to analyze your own clinical trial data? You need a purpose-built machine. Oh, here's one, Netra AI. Okay, so we're moving to an era where the industry is now starting to say, oh, maybe this AI thing is going to be important. They've at least moved to large language models. And Luca, you can expand on this because you helped write these papers. And now we're going to be moving to purpose-built models. And this isn't just an AI. I've had people say to me, is this just an algorithm? No, this is a mathematical, multi-dimensional paradigm. Now, you don't want to say that to people because they're like, oh my God, what the heck are you talking about? But Luca, talk a little bit about speciation, purpose-built machines.
We about 1 year and a half ago. So you have also an idea how ahead we are of the curve. Nobody was talking about agentic system, Jeff, back then. Okay, almost more than 1.5 years ago, we saw this divergence coming. Some LLM had clear limitations because people were confusing the ability of describing something. Okay, very well. The machines and the new release were getting better and better with the understanding of what that meant. And in biology, that is a big difference. It's like if I describe your symptoms, okay, I understand your disease. It's not true. Your disease might have something completely different in the very biology that express with many symptoms that are different, okay? But I can describe symptoms because it's the only thing I see. The phenomenus, okay, that's a Greek word. Here you go. Phenomenon, okay, what appears, what I see. So what happens is that you might remember this as well. DeepSeek, about 1 year ago, right, came out with the technical document. The technical document was this: it's for free. It's open. Okay, there is a catch there for those of you who like the Chinese word. There is a catch there, so be careful. But anyway, it was there, so we could run an AI experiment. You can run AI experiment as much as you run biology experiment or physics experiment, in which we simulated a clinical trials, or we took clinical trials and we had the machines analyze it. Okay. One machine was specialized, was the Netramark, the earlier version 1 year ago. Then Joe and his team made it better and better. And the other one was DeepSeek. Long story short, a small data set, okay, about 40 patients. We asked the two machines to come up with some pattern. DeepSeek found 2-3 patients that were similar out of these 40. NetAI found of this subgroup 36 of them. So 1 order of magnitude. Then we said to DeepSeek what we found, and DeepSeek said, "You're right. I can see it now." So it is unable to produce the result, is always good, is an LLM in pleasing you. Okay, long story short, again, this is what we do. This paper is now under revision, and we are publishing this. Again, that's another thing we submit ourselves to. And this is very good, I think, for the investor community. We go in front of our peers as high as they can get, okay? For have a peer review, vetted, not vetted. We have to do rounds of referees. You know how it works, right? Scientific papers are like this. You know, otherwise, Jeff, we could put out a white paper or a website paper every other day, okay? And I know a lot of companies do this, and they're very nice. They spend a lot of money in the figures and the colors and the animations, but they have not been vetted by anybody, okay? And there is a saying, you know, in the science world, that is, when you don't have anything to say, try to say it in color, okay, so people can be a little bit hand waving or so on. Well, our things are in black and white, Courier, you know, American typewriter font, pitch 12, very, very essential, very minimalist, but the experiments are there. If you want to enjoy what we are doing in the psychedelic field, for instance, we released a very interesting paper in Frontiers in Pharmacology about the quantum brain. We came up, after 50 years and more of research in the psychedelic field, we came out with an hypothesis that with the help of also our strategists, some of our machine can reason in clinical terms, of why psychedelics are so unique. What I told you in the beginning, between the patient responding or non-responding, in the psychedelic becomes paradoxical, Jeff. It becomes that one single administration, or psilocybin or DMT or LSD or mescaline, whatever, can treat you for life. One single administration from a treatment-resistant depression. You did not respond to anything. You took all the drugs that are out there. You even did electroconvulsive therapy. You still do not respond. You do one treatment with one of these things, you are cured for life. Okay? On the other extreme, you take one of these things and you are gone for life. Gone. Completely hallucinating, delusional. You jump out of a bridge. Okay? And you kill yourself. These two extremes are a normal biological response, normal in a sense, okay? Nobody knew how this happens. We came up with a theory on this calcium molecule that Joe, of course, the genius of the company, came up. on the possibility that this was a unique quantum effect in the brain. Believe it or not, this paper has been downloaded 1,000 times. In the first few days it's been out. We can see the metrics. And a lot of people in the psychedelic space, we know everybody, as George was saying, between here and Europe, send me text, LinkedIn, mail. Fine, you guys are lunatics, but this is the first time you're coming up with something that is completely new. And this is because the attitude of this company is to be continuously in the future. In the future, that is the difficulties that the poor George has, that a lot of other people don't understand yet. I hope you do, though. It's important for you that you understand this, because this really will change how we proceed in these things. But this is the story of what Netra has come about. It's in the last, George is right, in the last, I would say 1 year, George, probably, that the wind is really changing. Yes, correct.
Yeah.
So,
Jeff, we've got a few minutes left. I don't know if there's any other closing questions you might have. We
just
could talk for
quickly.
hours, I'm sure.
Yeah, just quickly, we've talked about the FDA nature. Talk about the company validity, the contracts you've had so far, the outlook as people are shifting. You've had numerous contracts. So what are the ones that you'd say of significance in the scope of them and what they offer
Yeah,
for
so
them?
contracts are always what people are asking. I do want to make sure I'm 100%. I say this a lot, but people get confused about this. In our industry, in the pharmaceutical industry and the service companies that, serve the pharmaceutical industry, they're very focused on, contract backlog. And so what's contract backlog? Contract backlog is we sign a contract with a company. There isn't work to do right now. There's work to do at a point in the future, because there's only work for us to do when there's data for us to analyze. So if Jeff Hunter Pharmaceutical Inc. is just completed or is just starting a phase 2 trial and it's going to end in 14 months, okay, our work will occur in 14 months when the trial phase comes to an end and there's data for us to analyze. Our goal is, how do we get as many contracts signed so that when we're projecting the future, when we're looking outwards into the future, we're not just forecasting based on, hey, if we got, 0.5% of this huge addressable market, look at how much, because that's just made up. What we're trying to do is put a pin in, when are we going to start to run into this contract backlog, okay? And so we've been working very hard. Our fiscal year starts October 1, and between October 1, 2025 was the beginning of the current fiscal year. Okay, and so far we've signed a little over 3 million into contract backlog, and some of it will, transfer over. And a big part, we probably thought we would have been a little farther ahead. And really the only reason where we're at right now is the onboarding of worldwide clinical trials. Okay, and so we expect things to really start to move forward, in particular on that front. It took us most of 2025 just to complete the quality assurance onboarding, which was a challenging process, but very important, because worldwide gets audited by their pharmaceutical clients, et cetera. And so they got to make sure they, dot the I's and cross the T's. So that took quite a long time, a lot longer than we would have anticipated. Okay. And now we're really into, great. Now we've done that. We can check that box. And this is a huge company. You got to understand, they're running approximately 350 clinical trials right now. Those are all going to have readouts. That's part of our addressable market within worldwide. And then they win about 100 to 120 new bids every year, okay, because they're a big company. So now, because they're so big and they've got thousands of employees in almost 70 countries around the world, people are like, why aren't you getting things rolling faster? It's a big company with enterprise type software. So trying to embed into that process has taken some time, of which we've been working very hard at this. I don't want anybody to think that we're not. And it's also great that we now have Pantelli, who's reports to the CEO of Worldwide Clinical Trials, who's also joined. So it's another voice to help accelerate the onboarding of that so we can activate that. So we kind of see things continuing to move forward. We're very happy about where we're at. And just remember, like I said, we're doing something big and monumental, okay? From a financial perspective, we've got lots of cash. We've got 3.5 million of cash on the balance sheet. Yes, if you look at the recent quarter, there's one-time spikes in that quarter. Why? Well, we just went onto the TSX. It's not an inexpensive venture to move from the CSX, not to the TSX venture, but to the TSX exchange. So there's one-time costs, okay, that affect things sometimes. But really, we're looking at it from the perspective of we're about 340, 350,000 Canadian per month as a fixed cash burn. That's really, really, really low. I would ask anybody else to find an AI company with a cash burn that's that low. So we're going to continue to work hard. We just announced another contract earlier. We've got 7 proposals that are currently out right in signature phase. So there's lots there. There's over 40 that's in our lead pipeline, meaning they're companies that we're interacting with. That's the direct to pharmaceutical company and worldwide. So our total addressable market in front of us right away is a lot of clinical trial opportunities. Okay. So, and I think I said this, Jeff, when you were at the TSX market opening, that's why it's a little bit lumpy in these early phases. You got to get the evidence in, you got to get the FDA thing happening, you got to figure out how you're going to onboard with these things. It just takes time in this industry. And it can be a pain, no doubt about it, but it can also be a moat if you want to look at it as a positive, which is if somebody else wants to come in and do this, they have years and years of pain to just penetrate the pharmaceutical industry. Okay. And there's very few companies even focusing on this specific problem. Most of the things people constantly send me, oh, look, here's another company entering AI drug discovery. And it's like, we don't do that. We don't compete with that company. I actually really hope that that company does really well. Why? Because they're going to bring on new drugs that are going to go through the clinical trial process and will face the same risks that every other clinical trial company will face and will need a technology like NetraAI. So we do not do drug discovery or drug resurrection or drug repurposing. We are focusing on clinical trials becoming more successful so we can get drugs to the market as soon as humanly possible to help people. Any other questions you might have before we conclude?
I think unless Raheem or Dave, any last little bits, just given that we're close on
Just
the
one,
hour.
just one question here, if you guys can hear me. I'm in Mexico right now, enjoying
Beautiful.
life with the family.
Good for
Listen,
you.
we're one of the biggest shareholders in this group. My family and I are avid investors, supporters. Dave, Jeff, and I have spent 5 years helping to build the blocks of enterprise and capital to bring the runway of opportunity ahead. 3 things we see. One, there is a legacy here, a legacy opportunity for all of us involved to help make a difference in this world. Number 2, we're capitalists at the end of the day. We want to make a lot of money. And number 3, there's a niche opportunity here. And when George and all the other people, incredible people involved, like Dr. Joe, started bringing on high caliber talent, experience, there was such an incredible potential here. Josh coming in your mind, there's a valuation difference between a public company and a private company, but at the end of the day, those things will narrow. Is this an $82 million public company or something that's probably worth much more? All things considered,
Mm-hmm.
nothing is guaranteed, and there's always a risk of failure.
Yeah.
Keeping that in mind, this call is all about de-risking the opportunity ahead. We've never been more excited. We don't worry too much about the stock price. We worry about milestones. Milestones will help us achieve hurdles. And once those hurdles are achieved, then it's just a race until somebody wants us to such a degree that it's just an enviable opportunity. So take what I say with what you would, interpret, but this company's worth a lot of money at the end of the day. The technology's there, the people are there, the platform is there, the opportunity is there. Anything to speak to that?
I mean, we're all here because we agree with everything that you just said, Raheem. And when you don't stumble across a lot of opportunities in your lifetime, that are like this. I'm 57. Luke is a little bit older than me. And where do you run into situations where you have a very clear problem that's been a problem for 50, 60, 70 years and it's not getting better? So you have a very clear problem. Then you happen to find a person like Dr. Joseph Geraci, who's a PhD in math and mathematics that he got with DARPA. He's got his postdoc in oncology, his postdoc in psychiatry, and I think a postdoc in quantum medicine. I don't even know. He's got a lot of postdocs. But somebody who's actually figured out a solution, a piece of technology that can address this problem. So now you have two things you can check the box. The third part is, can you attract the team? So when I became CEO, we did not have the team that we have now. And we've attracted the team. And we've only attracted the team because of the first two things. They all know there's a problem. They had to take a look at the tech and figure out, does this tech actually work or is this a bunch of bullshit? They had to look at that because they got a lot of opportunities in their lives, right? So when they do those two things and they go, check, check, what do? I'd like to join the company. Like, that's how it works. You don't have this. I've not, maybe it's just me, but in 30 years of doing business, to have all of those things occur and come together, it's not that common. So when it comes together like this, yes, we all have the pressure. And would we like the stock price to be substantially higher? Of course, we're all aligned. At the same time, we have to marry that with, let's not screw it up. Let's do it the right way so we can have a great pass, work with great people, and do something amazing because we're doing something big. We're not making cups. We're trying to change the future of medicine. Okay, so when you put all those things together, I don't think that comes around in one's lifetime very often. And that's why I'm excited. And that's why everybody else is here. And that's why a guy like Pantelli recently joined, literally like within the last month. So it's not like things are getting worse, they're getting better. And that's why we're all excited to be here. And yes, I do want to just thank everybody at Canaccord. This has been a great partnership. You guys have been through a lot with us, and I'm very grateful. We've got a really amazing shareholder base, and we're doing it. We're doing it the right way. Okay, we've protected the cap table. We don't have 800 million shares outstanding. We've structured this really, really well. We have no debt. We're very capital efficient. There's a lot of things that have come together here. We just got to be a little patient, but we've got amazing things on the horizon.
Awesome. Well, with that, there will be a recording of this. I'll send it out once it gets the approval. Thanks everyone for sharing your time. Dr. Lucapani, George, incredible. We, this one hits a little close to home because I do have to, I am on drugs that have helped save my life and have had to go through the juggling of things to get the right mix. And
So
it's not a simple process. It's not an enjoyable process. And there is a better way to do it. And I'm glad some people are looking at addressing that because I think the opportunity is incredible. Not just from a high five, making the world a better place, but from a capital place, which is where we're on the side. And it's very rare that you get to do both to a true extent. So I commend the work that you guys are doing, and we'll be chatting soon. Thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks for joining us on your lunch hours and afternoons.
Thanks for having us, Jeff.
All right. Have a great day.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Brian. Bye.
Bye-bye.